Good morning. So let's start short term, if that's okay, and look at the outlook for China's housing market. We're looking at Golden Week as perhaps an opportunity to see some buying and maybe a floor on the market, maybe transactions or price. What's your outlook short term?
I think in the short term, because of the government's incentive to help the first and second-time home buyers, we do think that there will be some solid sales in the immediate announcements, the weekends following, especially during the Golden Week when people have a bit of a time, they might be shopping around. But I think it's going to benefit more of the SOE developers rather than the private developers, which could be still a problem for Evergrande and Country Garden.
So, Christine, you can't look at this market as essentially one thing which is unitary or one homogenous, because, I mean, we've got tier one cities that aren't that badly off compared to some of the 3 and 4 tiered cities here as well. Is that gap likely to worsen? And if that is the case, what are the pressures it brings on the financial system?
Yes, I think the gap is likely to widen still, because if you look at the whole 14 years of Chinese history, basically the urbanization rate rose from 18% in the 1972 at the start of the reform until 2022, it's about 65%. So you can see this big urban migration, which means a lot of flats need to be delivered in the homes, particularly in the first-tier cities, first and second-tier cities along the coastline. But for third, fourth, and fifth tier cities, I would say that the demand is quite speculative, because people were under the impression that prices are only going one way up. That's why a lot of investors jump into these kind of markets. But actually, if you look at the population catchment, the demand drivers, those cities are actually on the very weak side. So in terms of the stress to the financial sector, definitely because of the deleveraging process, it has hurt growth and confidence in the market. And over the short to long term, we are likely to see that, the sentiments are not going to flip immediately overnight just because some relaxation of the cooling measures, because the government still needs to address some of the fundamental problems of the property market, which is the funding for the developers, particularly the privately owned developers, as well as the broader economic prospect. Because if people are not confident about the job prospect, they're not going to commit to something that's big ticket.
Christine, that's a good point, and that's really an interesting way to look at it. And I'm glad you brought it up, because it's easy to confuse the weakness in the property market, and understandably so, with the weakness in the economy. So I guess my question there is, let's say we strip out how effective some of the deleveraging campaign and the measures there have been on the property developers. Do you think if the economy improves, most of this pain goes away?
I wouldn't say most of the pain goes away, because if you look at the property bubble in China, I would say it is currently too big for maybe the country to handle if the economic growth going forward is going to be like 5% compared to, say, 6 to 8% in the past. So definitely there will be some steam off this property growth. And the issue is also with the local government debt, because they have been generating all these revenues through land sales. And when property prices are not stabilized, they are not going to get the debt repayments to whoever the creditors are, and that's going to cause more problems down the road. So I think the immediate priority for the government is to look at the B2C segment to make sure that consumers are protected. As long as the confidence is restored, I would say part of the problem, or the large part of the problem, will be solved. Although I would think that there's some structural challenges going ahead, particularly around the demographics, the slowing down of the working population, the youth unemployment rate. They are also going to impact the property demand going forward. But as we think that China is still going to be the growth engine of Asia in the next decade, despite the short-term volatility, we are still going to be quite positive.